Well, let's talk about the weekend. We'll finish with Munster. We'll start and we'll go backwards. Leinster's performance against Exeter. This is an Exeter team, the English champions, unbeaten at home for a year, and they never really looked like they were going to win that game.
Never. I thought Leinster, from the word go, they came out with a real intent, game plan, and I think you can have game plans and decide what way you want to play. And sometimes in all sport, it's a template for keeping you structured and organised and knowing what you're doing. But ultimately, particularly when you go away from home, you hear the word character a lot, and you hear the word passion and togetherness, and that's what Leinster showed yesterday. Obviously, they have a good skill set, and they had a structure and a plan where to attack Exeter. But a lot of the stuff in the 50-50 battles, like balls being kicked in the air, one-on-one tackles, getting back up off the ground, Leinster were really...
The goal line stand just before half-time that they went absolutely... They celebrated like they'd won the match.
Yeah.
And on their own...
and these are massive moments. I remember when I played, and was one of the big things when we were in a fairly successful Munster team, was the pride you have in those hard moments in a game. They're the kind of ones you really remember. Is you get a score or a penalty or a try or whatever, and you're down the field, and inevitably good teams will come back and challenge you.
Yeah.
So Exeter were always going to ask questions of Leinster, and for them to defend the way they did,
celebrating the Cooney try.
Yeah, and it was togetherness, it was collectiveness in the way they worked for each other, and then obviously they like watching the game and even the interview with Rob Baxter after they scored that try, and Steenson missed the penalty for him to go ahead. It's 8-8. You think, a bit of a momentum shift here, and then suddenly Leinster just changed gears just with the simple things, and Exeter started making little mistakes, like losing the kicking battle, a couple of knock-ons, but the pressure Leinster put on them was unbelievable. It was sensational effort level from both sides now, because they were defending at times with their lives dependent on it as well. It was a great win for them.
There was 44 phases involved in that Jack Cooney try. There was obviously two huge defensive efforts from Leinster in particular. I can't remember how many phases were involved in those two chances for Exeter. You'd imagine that the glory of the win outweighs the toll that those three humongous efforts take on the Leinster bodies.
Yeah, it's but I think physically when you come off a field, and Tyke Furlong said that yesterday or afterwards, he was man of the match. He was outstanding, that they were sucking diesel. You could see after those long phases stopped, guys with their hands on their knees, panting like mad, and you can imagine running around for that long, making tackles, the physical toll. The important part of it is the recovery. No, they didn't get home last night. They had to stay, and that wasn't part of the plan.
No, it's
so
not
that
right.
might make it's just a little bit tricky. Getting back in last night, ice baths, recovery today, off. So it'll have to be a light week from Rhys Ruddock. He looks like he's going to be out.
Sexton out as well. I don't think Cullen was too worried last night, but you still never know.
He's never that worried, and then suddenly players miss 3-4 weeks, and it's like, all right, that was a bit more serious. Yeah,
obviously with some bangs and knocks, you don't know. The Ruddock one looks really looks worrying when you're hobbling off like that. Sexton's, he has so many bangs and knocks throughout games, you just don't know. But they were fantastic, and it was a great win. If you look at the pool and like they're 14 points after 3 games.
They were home and hose until Montpellier went to Glasgow.
Points with,
it's amazing.
So they've got they've got to be wary, because they lost. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, they beat Northampton over their fantastic win,
got
and
a bonus point away.
Came back and beat them in Dublin. So I think that'll stand them in good stead. They'll still got to be very wary of Exeter. I think Exeter will be more disappointed with their performance, because they throw the ball around a lot, and they try to take on Leinster around the fringes and up front, which they're very efficient, and they profit a lot from that in the top 4 or in the Aviva Premiership, where they're very dominant with pick and goes, running hard over people, being direct. Leinster just stopped them at source there, so I think they might change their approach coming to Dublin, but they're in a great position now, Leinster.
One of the numbers that came up in a lot of the papers this morning was the amount of internationals, that Exeter only had 3 players involved with the England squad last month, whereas 7 players from Leinster didn't even play yesterday, that were involved with Ireland last month. So is this kind of everybody kind of doing a U-turn on Exeter, that they really are overachievers and that potentially they don't have the quality all the time?
No, I don't think so. I think they have a really good side, and you can imagine the amount of clubs and the amount of players who are available for selection for England, that they have a bigger playing pool. So to look down on Exeter maybe a little bit and say, well, why haven't they more internationals? They probably have more collective, outstanding club players, with a couple of exceptions, like Noel, like Slade, like Armand, the wing forward, the number 6, who was fantastic, and he shows why Eddie Jones has called him into the squad. But not many superstars, but collectively they're so efficient and they're so hard to beat in Sandy Park. That's why this Leinster win is so impressive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a case of, they got lucky. They were dominant from the word go, in my opinion. Set the tone early on.
I was delighted for Les Case as well, the results of the weekend. He obviously is somebody who's under a lot of pressure at the moment.
Yeah.
And, going to Harlequins in those conditions, anything could happen. They didn't even have Rory Best playing, and you're thinking, Jesus, this could be pretty horrific for them today. And they just dig it in, and they're like, okay, no, we're not going to go away. We're as unified as a team can be, given the difficulties they've been having.
Yeah, they've given themselves a lifeline, Ger, here for possibly a runners-up spot in the pool. Obviously, if things have to go well for them. La Rochelle, I just can't see them being caught. They're probably going to get maximum the whole way through and probably 15, have a home quarter
15
final.
From 15
and
there.
They're real contenders to win this thing outright.
The fact that they beat Harlequins in Quins means that maybe Quins put out a team next week and realise, okay, there's no point in us going, and then suddenly
they've got to get maximum next week, and La Rochelle go to Wasps, so you nearly hope Wasps beat La Rochelle to stop them. But La Rochelle, I think, will top the group. I think Ulster's best chance, and they had to get that a win yesterday. It was non-negotiable for them. They get a bonus point win next week. Then they've got La Rochelle coming. So if Wasps were to beat La Rochelle next week, and then Ulster were to beat La Rochelle, in the Kingspan, and then they're away to Wasps. I think for Ulster, giving themselves a chance for it to come down to that Wasps game, maybe a straight shootout for second in the pool is probably the best they can hope for. Of course, if the results go their way with La Rochelle, but they've got to try and get out of this group. 18, 19 points will probably get you out. So they're on 8 with 3 games left. They've got to find 10, 11 points somewhere there in those 3 games.
Not impossible. They could get snagged next week.
No, and they're a good side when they're on song, when they work together, and when they, create opportunities for themselves and are more efficient. They're a dangerous side. There's no doubt about that.
Possibly the biggest thing from yesterday was that it was probably John Cooney's best performance of the season, because people have looked at that 10 jersey without Jackson, and they've been saying, right, this team isn't good enough without a top class number 10, whereas if John Cooney plays like that again, this thing could be on.
He's a really talented footballer. There's no doubt about that. He can play 9, 10. 9 is probably his preferred position, but no matter what half-backs you have, Conor Murray, Johnny Sexton, who are up there with the best in the world, if your pack is not performing, and that's been the issue for Ulster, is what's happening up front. The ability to dominate like a Leinster did at the weekend, like Munster did against Leicester on Saturday. Dominated, and you see the difference when the scrum half, the out half have time on the ball. They've that half a second extra.
Right.
They can make a decision.
Yeah.
They can bring people into the game. So Ulster's forwards performed yesterday. Now, are Quins a little bit porous? Have they the same punch as some of the other teams? No, I'm not so sure. But that's been the issue for Ulster over the last couple of years, is what's happening up front. But Cooney certainly was outstanding.
All right, obviously a brilliant weekend for Irish rugby all round. It started at Thomond Park on Saturday night. Our commentary team, Liam Toland, Keith Wood and Dave McIntyre were there. Have a look.
Keatley with a chip over the top. Zebo's going after it. Oh, Zebo's there! That is a cracking try! Wonderful rugby from Munster. This time the bounce was perfect. It looked like it could get away from him. Instead, it's hopped up off the deck, straight into his chest, and it was one of the easiest finishes he'll ever have.
The change of pace, the innovation, the 25-metre throw over the top of the line out to Scannell. Every single part of that play was excellent. Cleete in at 9 twice, one to pass, one to pick and go. Beautiful dink over the top. And Zebo knew exactly, it was well called and brilliant. And of course Zebo has a little bit of a shuffle and a pimp roll at the end of it. So
yeah, there you go. Zebo's dance pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I was only Simon Zebo could get away with that, but it was a great score, and it was obviously called. And you see Zebo hovering around there, and You talk about a bit of luck. The ball bounces
bounce
up,
is amazing.
but if you don't try these things, you don't
also-
get the return. And we've seen them before.
Just not being that bit in front of the kicker. Sometimes they go against you.
Borderline, very, very close. But I think he was just about right. But it was look. They got what they deserved, Munster. They were outstanding. It was as good as I've seen them at the breakdown and up front as a pack of forwards. They were fantastic.
Really important for Van Graan to have an experience like that, where there's no sense that the team has automatically fallen off because Rasmus isn't there and Nyanabar isn't there. It's like, okay, continuation of exactly where we were. That's clearly driven by the players. You know, he hasn't had that impact in 10 days or 2 weeks or however long he's been there, but really important that he's now part of that thing.
Absolutely. For him to experience that firsthand, the atmosphere, the energy levels, the place is electric when it's like that. They're special nights that you don't forget as a player or a supporter. For him to get right engrossed in the middle of that, it will be a real eye-opener. I know he was there at the Racing game in round... Was that round two? Two, yeah. And round 2, yeah, because they were cast away in the first one. So that'll be brilliant for him. They were brilliant, to be fair. They were very direct. They didn't kind of over complicate the game plan, but they blew Leicester away. And you think traditionally Leicester's kind of firepower is all up front, but they just had no quality of ball, and Munster were really, really dominant and so deserving of the win.
You can see from that performance why Leicester might be interested in somebody like Peter O'Mahony in their team. That he was one of the players linked to them. You mentioned Simon Zio was the only one who can get away with that dance. Can he get away with the tweet like this? In other news, great performance this week from these two on and off the pitch. They're dollar signs, dollar earrings being worn by Omani and Stander, and then packets of cash just in their laps and in their locker.
They've a couple up over the top as well, over the top part of the locker. But I think he's. It's a bit of good humour. It's exactly what we're all thinking. But like O'Mahony said, and this is why he's so important to Munster, because he goes out and backs it up.
Yeah.
He said all week he's been asked a question, and people are doing their jobs asking these questions or whatever, and they want to know. And he went out and played outstandingly well. But the back row as a unit, Stander again turned up. Clote was superb. The front five set a great platform for him. But when you have these kind of distractions, you can let them affect you one way or the other. If Omani and Stander play poorly, what are people going to say?
Everybody says they're counting their money and they're keeping
it's
themselves.
on their mind, they've let it affect them. But they go out and play well, and they say, this is why people want to sign these guys, because they're top class players who front up, who do the job well week after week after week, and that's what they did at the weekend. And
surely Munster have enough connections with enough businesses around the place to be able to say, this is what we need for CJ and this is what we need for Peter Mahoney. We're going to give them this amount from our accounts, and come on down corporate Munster and corporate Ireland, and let's help keep these lads here.
Yeah, I think it hasn't got to that stage yet where they're still kind of directly in negotiation with the RFU, the agents. So they'll get to that position where it'll be
this is it now. Give
take it or leave it, or vice versa for each party. And then at that stage, I think the exact same. Surely there's enough of corporates, multinational companies down in Munster, in Cork, in Limerick, around the place, who might step in and say, look, we'll top up a contract by whatever, 50 grand, and give us X number of appearances throughout the year. But it's happened in one or two in Leinster with the contracts, and that's fine. But then that's Munster thinking outside the box and trying to do everything they can. And look, I'm sure they will do everything they can, because this is just a little bit. This is more than just a playing. What you get from the player on the field. This is a message to the organisation, to the fans, and these guys epitomise Munster. Really,
that's the thing. Like, this isn't. There are some players who you think it's unfortunate that they've been allowed to go, but then there are other players who you think this is the foundational. And
O'Mahony is just Munster through and through. Would have come through the system. I was there when he my last couple of seasons when he came in, and straight away you see Peter and you think leadership.
It's safe.
Yeah, you see leadership, you see passion, you see all the stuff you want to see in a guy. Attitude, character. you can dissect everyone's performance and say, well, they should have done this, this and this in a game, but just the fundamentals of putting on that jersey are really good, and he has that natural leadership. And to be fair to Stander, with some of the criticism over this residency situation, he is so passionate about playing for Munster. But ultimately, and I've said this last week, if you don't get your value, and anyone in society or business, particularly when it's sometimes 3 times what you're being offered here, 2.5, 3 times, it's a tricky one.
We can't let you out of here without asking about Matt O'Connor at the weekend. Like, obviously calling Munster cynical, killing the game at every opportunity. But is this just the air of a man who didn't manage to quite suss out the referee as well as Johan van Graan did?
No, I think it's nothing to do with Matt O'Connor really, because sussing out the referee. I think his team didn't suss out the referee. I watched Tom Youngs, and what a gentleman, what a nice fella, really good player. But I saw, go back to the 2 games last year, and he just gave away a load of penalties in both those games, and he was captain last year. And just the other night, some of the decisions coming in from the side, and again, rich coming from me for sure, but they hurt their team so much last week. And Munster's discipline was so good. I think it's been sloppy in the previous couple of weeks, but their discipline was so good. And when your discipline is good and you're not giving the opposition easy outs to clear their lines, shots at goal, all that stuff, they had no chances, they had no opportunities. So I think there's a frustration probably from Matt O'Connor, and he's probably just thrown her out there for the game next week that, put a little bit of pressure on whoever's reffing next week, that Munster are illegal. But I think it's a compliment, and I just wonder what he would say if I was out in the bloody field about cynical. But Munster, I wouldn't call it cynical. I would call them just, what I would say was, they were just so collectively good at the breakdown, and they just blew them away. And if they turn up with that kind of aggression it's hard to kind of have that level of aggression. Yeah. But they had it at the weekend, and you just see the reaction when someone carried a ball. There was just 3 guys in over the ball, no Leicester opportunity, and they were trying hard then and getting a bit frustrated. So I think for Matt O'Connor, I wouldn't kind of go, well, it's sour grapes. I think it's probably a little bit of frustration after the game, and trying to maybe throw it out there for next week when they go to Welford Road.
One last question. If there was a comeback player of the year, Ian Keatley would be the sole nominee, maybe.
Outstanding. I think he's a different player, and in fairness, he's taken a bit of flack before, and he's shown that character to come back for it and stay going, really, you know what I mean, at times when
to get better.
He's a great example in sport, and that's not to say he's going to go on and be outstanding forevermore. He's probably going to have a few ups and downs again, but I think he'll have learned a lot from it. Being in with Joe Schmidt, getting those disappointments makes you stronger. So I just think, I've always said this about the guy, he's an outstanding, talented footballer. He can pass, he can run, he can kick. The only doubt was ever about him was his management, and maybe sometimes his physicality and his application, getting himself into the game. But he looks a different player this year. He's been outstanding and well deserved. And I think it's a great story to see that kind of resilience in a sports person. Yeah,
because I mean, sometimes you write players off in their early 20s, and then it's their late 20s, and maybe that kind of peak, particularly in that position around 28, 32.
He's a confidence player as well, Jerry. You know, he's a confidence player, and if you feel good as a sports person out there, even when you're under pressure, and you have that belief, and maybe he wasn't steely enough, and hopefully he's shown signs that that's not an issue now. He was brilliant, real confidence player.
All right, Quinny, good stuff. Thanks very much. There's the Pool 4 Champions Cup. I mean, no one's home and host here. Next week is an absolutely massive game. It's the reverse of the fixtures, so it's Leicester against Munster, Welford Road. Do you take a losing bonus point at this point?
Yeah, I think so. Ideally, a win puts them in a really, really strong position, because I think it's going to be tricky going to Racing. I think Munster would probably prefer if Cast were to get something in Racing, and
so then
kind of put them out. But if Cast get 5, they go to 11, and that puts them right back in it, and then Munster have to travel there in round 5. So it's all to play for in this group. It's going to be so tight. There's going to be very little in this in the end. I think all the teams in there will lose games before the end. So this could be an 18, 19 pointer topping the pool. Not coming second. I don't think 2 will come out of this group.
It's tight enough, all right. Yeah, it is a brilliant tournament. The English clubs really fixed it to be a brilliant tournament, and then they were supposed to fix it for themselves to win all the games. But funny enough, they didn't have such a good weekend. You have to be careful what
Yeah,
you wish
we
for
shouldn't get
sometimes.
ahead of ourselves because next week
we're allowed one week to get ahead of
weekend.
ourselves.
Wait till next weekend. But look, it was fantastic.
4 days of
and
bragging,
the
and then
Ospreys
we
beat
got quiet on
Northampton as
Friday.
well. Did you see that
Yeah,
game? It was
yeah.
sensational.
And they were like 40-0 up at
points.
one point.
It was 43-6 at one stage.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
And then they
game.
almost they didn't quite almost throw it away because it just wasn't enough time. But Northampton came roaring back.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
still got a losing bonus point.